There is a quiet heartbreak that lives inside every ambitious person, not because they dream too little, but because they aim high and keep falling short. They set goals, they write plans, they repeat affirmations, and yet, somewhere between the intention and the outcome, something collapses. It's not laziness, it's not intelligence, it's not even discipline. It's misalignment. Most people do not fail because they are weak. They fail because they are using a map drawn by someone else's hand, chasing goals they never truly understood, using strategies their brain was never wired to follow. You are not broken. You are misdirected. And until you understand why, you will keep sabotaging the very things you swore mattered most. You see, there is a hidden science behind every goal you've ever set, a rhythm, a pattern, a neurological sequence. And if you ignore it, you will fight yourself in every step. But if you align with it, you will create results so consistent, so predictable, they will appear inevitable. This is not about trying harder. This is about setting goals the way your brain actually works. Because when you do that, you don't have to chase progress. You become the kind of person it chases. You've been told the key to success is simple. Set a goal, work hard, and never give up. But that idea, while noble, is dangerously incomplete. Because the truth is, setting a goal without understanding how your mind processes goals is like handing a compass to someone who doesn't know how to read it, then blaming them when they get lost. Let me show you the missing piece. When you set a goal, two parts of your brain immediately engage in a silent negotiation. First, the amygdala, the ancient emotional sentinel, scans the goal for significance. Is this urgent? Is it meaningful? Will this protect us, grow us, define us? If the answer is weak or unclear, the amygdala marks the goal as optional, not dangerous, not necessary, and not worth disrupting your comfort for. Then comes the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic, strategy, long-term planning. It tries to map out the path, the steps, the milestones, the behaviors required. But here's the catch. If the amygdala doesn't feel it, if you haven't wired emotional consequence into the goal, then no matter how well the prefrontal cortex maps the road, your brain won't walk it. That's why so many of your goals start with passion and end with dust. It's not that the goal was wrong, it's that your brain didn't believe it mattered enough to override your default programming. You may think discipline is your problem, but discipline without emotional clarity is like flooring the gas with the emergency brake still on. You will burn out before you break through. And this, my friend, is the tragedy of most ambition. People try to use logic to solve emotional puzzles. They try to push themselves into progress instead of pulling themselves forward with purpose. Your brain is not a calculator. It is a survival machine. It's not asking, is this goal smart? It's asking, is this goal safe? Is this goal real? Is this goal me? Until your goals are wired with emotion, deep, resonant personal meaning, your brain will continue to treat them as nice ideas, not non-negotiables. This is why people break promises to themselves so easily, because emotionally, the promises weren't anchored. And that's the real reason you're not hitting your goals. You're trying to build skyscrapers on foundations your brain doesn't trust. So what do? We stop idolizing motivation. We start engineering belief. We build the kind of internal environment where your brain doesn't resist the goal, it fights for it. Where your nervous system says, this isn't just a preference, this is part of who I am now. And that transformation, that shift from obligation to identity, begins in the structure of your mind. If I told you that your brain already knows how to achieve goals, would you believe me? Not the surface goals, the ones you write in a notebook and forget by February, but the ones you burn for, the ones that feel like destiny, not desire. There's a blueprint inside your biology, and once you understand how it operates, you stop treating success like a mystery and start treating it like math. Let's go deeper. When you vividly imagine a goal, when you can see it, hear it, feel it, your brain does something extraordinary. It begins to treat that imagined outcome as real. Neurons fire, synapses spark, dopamine is released, not for achieving the goal, but for merely believing it is attainable. You see, your brain is not waiting for results, it's waiting for conviction. And the moment you provide it, When your mental rehearsal becomes detailed, repeated, and emotionally rich, your brain builds a new neural pathway. This is not poetry, this is neuroscience. Neural pathways are like trails in the forest. The more often you walk a trail, the clearer it becomes, the easier it is to follow. Eventually, it becomes the path of least resistance. And when your goal becomes that kind of path, automatic, predictable, rehearsed, it ceases to feel foreign. It feels like home. This is the science of visualization. But it's more than daydreaming. It's not about sitting in silence and imagining Ferraris. It's about rehearsing the identity you need to adopt to live the life you desire. Because here's what your brain cares about most: consistency. It is constantly asking, does this thought, this behavior, this goal align with who I believe I am? If the answer is yes, it opens the gates. You get access to more energy, more focus, more willpower. If the answer is no, your subconscious will quietly sabotage you in the name of preserving your identity. That's why affirmations alone don't work unless they're tied to action. That's why motivation fades unless it's grounded in habit. That's why willpower dies unless it's reinforced by emotional truth. Your brain needs proof, and the proof comes from repetition, mental, emotional, behavioral repetition. Think of it this way: the amygdala evaluates the importance of your goal. The prefrontal cortex creates the strategy. The visual cortex rehearses the outcome, and your motor system prepares for action. When these systems are in harmony, momentum begins to build. You stop relying on hype. You start tapping into internal gravity, a pull that comes not from pressure, but from identity. And this is why most people's goals never take root. They try to skip the process. They set goals intellectually, but never imprint them emotionally. They speak them aloud, but never see them vividly. They write them once, but never rehearse them again. They try to upgrade their results without upgrading their self-image. But once your self-image expands to include the goal, not just as something you want, but something that belongs to you, then your brain will find a way. That's what high performers understand, consciously or not. They don't just pursue goals, they become the kind of person who achieves them. And that brings us to the next turning point: the formula. The structure that takes dreams and gives them weight. We spent years asking the wrong question. How do I stay motivated? As if motivation is some divine spark granted only to the lucky or the genetically blessed. But the real question, the question that top performers, elite thinkers, and master builders ask, is this: how do I make success inevitable? You don't need more inspiration. You need a formula, a way to engineer your goals so precisely that your brain, your habits, and your life cannot help but fall into alignment. Here it is, clear, powerful, proven. Step 1. Specificity. The brain does not move toward generalities. I want to be successful means nothing. To the brain, that's white noise. It's a placeholder for real intention. But say this instead: I will launch my business by August 15th with 3 paying clients using a weekly outreach strategy. Now your brain has a target. Now it can allocate resources, judge progress, trigger dopamine. Ambiguity is the enemy of action. Clarity is the seed of momentum. Step 2. Emotional weight. If the goal doesn't move you emotionally, it won't move you behaviorally. This is where most goals die, not for lack of planning, but for lack of meaning. Tie your goal to a reason that matters, a why so strong it holds you when motivation fails. Don't just aim to lose 20 pounds. Say, I'm becoming the kind of parent who shows my kids what strength looks like. I want to run with them, play with them, and live long enough to see them thrive. That's a goal your nervous system won't ignore. Step 3. Measurement. You must be able to track your progress in real time. The brain loves feedback. It craves scoreboard clarity. If you can't measure it, you can't master it. Don't say, I want to get better at public speaking. Say, I will deliver 1 live speech every month, get feedback from 5 peers, and increase my rating from 7 out of 10s to 9 out of 10s by year end. Measurement turns fantasy into engineering. Step 4. Time constraint. Deadlines create urgency. They collapse infinite procrastination into focused windows of execution. Without time constraints, goals drift. With them, goals ignite. Step 5. Behavioral anchoring. Every goal must be tied to daily behaviors, small, repeatable actions that compound over time. I will write a best-selling book becomes I write 500 words each morning at 7:30 a.m., no matter how I feel. Identity is built through consistency, and consistency is built through structure. That's the formula. Simple, scientific, non-negotiable. Be specific enough that your brain knows what to do. Be emotional enough that your heart cares to follow. Be measurable enough to know when you're off course. Be timed enough to create urgency. Be structured enough to act daily without excuse. You follow that, and you've done more than set a goal. You've set a trap for success. It can't escape you. But let me issue a warning. Even with a perfect formula, there is a trap that seduces the ambitious, and if you're not careful, it will steal your progress, your peace, and eventually your identity. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. What if the reason you keep failing isn't because you aimed too high, but because you aimed at the wrong target? We've been taught that achieving a goal equals success, but that's not always true. You can achieve the wrong goal. You can build a life that looks impressive while feeling empty. You can win the game society taught you to play and still feel like you've lost. That's the trap of empty achievement. It happens when we adopt goals we don't understand, goals that belong to someone else. We chase six-figure incomes, not realizing we've sacrificed our freedom. We chase beach bodies only to find our self-worth was never in our weight. We chase titles, fame, likes, and legacy only to discover we're still restless, still waiting to feel enough. And the most dangerous part, these goals often work. You can hit them. You can hit them hard and still feel like you missed the point entirely. Why? Because goals that are not rooted in your values become prisons. They look like ambition on the outside, but they feel like betrayal on the inside. So before you climb the mountain, ask yourself, is this even my mountain? This is where most personal development goes blind. It teaches us how to win, but never asks us what's worth winning. It teaches hustle, but not harmony, strategy, but not self-awareness. And that's why so many high achievers, people with vision, with talent, with hunger, still find themselves overwhelmed, addicted to productivity, drowning in success. They never stop to ask, what does my definition of success look like? What matters to me, not just what looks good on paper? You must design your goals from the inside out. Start not with what you want to achieve, start with who you want to become. Start with your values, your priorities, your rhythm. Let those shape the target. Because when your goal is born from your core, when it reflects your truest self, you don't need to force discipline. You just need to stay honest. And sometimes staying honest means letting go of a goal that no longer fits. Not because you failed, but because you evolved. And that, my friend, is not weakness. That is wisdom. In the next section, I'll tell you a story, one that will challenge your assumptions about failure and show you why the best goals you ever set might be the ones you didn't finish. Many years ago, I knew a man who set an ambitious goal. He wanted to start a magazine, not a local flyer or a neighborhood digest, but a full-fledged national publication. He had a vision, stories that spoke to young men in a changing world, articles on growth, discipline, courage, self-reliance. He believed the modern man was hungering for direction, and he felt called to provide it. He secured funding, hired a small team of writers, sketched layouts late into the night. He saw every word, every headline, every page in his mind long before the presses rolled. He was consumed with purpose. This was it, his mountain. And yet, within 3 months, the entire project collapsed. The team fragmented, the message became diluted, and the dream, bold and electric just weeks before, felt suddenly heavy, hollow. So with quiet courage, he shut it down, not in bitterness, but with clarity. I asked him once, "Do you regret trying?" He smiled and said, "Not for a second. I discovered more about myself in that failure than I ever did chasing safe successes." You see, goals are not only about the prize, they are tools for revelation. That magazine never launched, but the man who conceived it, he emerged sharper, wiser, more aligned. Sometimes a goal's greatest gift is not its achievement, but its exposure of your values, your limits, your real desire. Because not all goals are meant to be fulfilled. Some are meant to form you, to show you what you thought you wanted and what you actually need. This is what I call strategic failure, when a goal dies, but your growth survives, when the dream fades, but but your vision gets clearer. The modern world teaches us to chase finish lines, to glorify grit at any cost. But there is wisdom in knowing when to course correct. There is maturity in letting go. Not every tower is meant to reach the sky. Some are meant to teach you how to build a better foundation. So do not mourn every missed mark. Study it, learn from it, let it refine your focus, because sometimes the goal you abandon is the very thing that opens the door to the life that truly fits you. You can chase goals all your life and still feel like a stranger to success. Why? Because you pursued results without becoming the person who naturally produces them. Real success begins not when you achieve a goal, but when you outgrow the need to chase it. Let me explain. There's a quiet but powerful truth hidden in plain sight. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your identity. We become what we consistently believe we are. You can set a goal to wake up at 5 a.m. every morning, but if you still see yourself as someone who hates mornings, you'll keep snoozing. You can vow to lose weight, but if deep down you believe you're just not the healthy type, your actions will betray your aspiration. You can aim to build wealth, but if your identity is still wrapped in scarcity, no budget will save you. This is not self-help fluff. This is behavioral science. Your identity is your operating system. Every habit, every decision, every risk you take is filtered through the lens of, who am I? So if your goals don't align with that answer, you will either sabotage them or exhaust yourself trying to maintain them. That's why transformation never lasts if it's only on the outside. Real, lasting change begins when the inside catches up, when you stop trying to act successful and start to see yourself as someone who succeeds, not by accident, but by nature. This is why the most powerful goals are not behavior-based, but identity-based. Don't say, I want to run a marathon. Say, I'm becoming the kind of person who trains daily, eats for energy, and thrives under challenge. Don't say, I want to write a book. Say, I'm a writer. Writing is what I do, because it's who I am. Your behavior will always find its way back to your self-concept, so change your self-concept, and the behavior will follow. This is how high achievers build momentum. They don't hustle harder. They build habits that reinforce the person they believe they are. Each small action becomes a vote for their future self. They aren't performing, they're practicing alignment. That is the secret to goals that last. You embody them. You don't just want discipline, you are disciplined. You don't just want peace, you are someone who protects their peace. You don't just want growth, you are growth in motion. And once that shift happens, once your identity begins to match the life you want, your brain stops fighting you. The friction fades, the resistance dies, and you enter what I call self-generated momentum. This is a kind of power that doesn't need music to dance, doesn't need applause to act, and doesn't need a deadline to begin. This is not hype. This is not willpower. It is a rhythm you create through alignment. Through 1,000 quiet votes for your future cast in moments no one sees. You see, most people wait. They wait for motivation to strike. They wait for the perfect plan. They wait for January, for Monday, for the mood to be right. But those who achieve real lasting success understand momentum isn't something you wait for, it's something you build. And how is it built? Through small, repeatable, identity-aligned actions done daily with no room for negotiation. Write 500 words even when uninspired. Go to the gym even when tired. Make the call, send the pitch, prepare the meal, even when no one is watching. Each action is a brick laid on the foundation of your values, pointing toward a future you've already chosen. This is why dopamine becomes your ally, not from the goal itself, but from progress, from streaks, from checked boxes, from showing up again and again. You create a loop. Set, act, reward, reinforce, repeat. Each completed behavior rewards your brain with a small pulse of satisfaction. That satisfaction becomes fuel, and over time, fuel becomes fire. But here's what makes the fire sustainable: structure. You don't rely on mood, you rely on systems, triggers, anchors, habits. You wake at the same time. You plan the night before. You create cues in your environment, notes, objects, rituals, so that action becomes automatic. You stack your behaviors. You reduce friction. You stop making decisions in the moment. and start obeying the rules you wrote when you were clear. And this is crucial. You don't aim for perfect. You aim for repeatable, because repeatability beats intensity. 100 ordinary days will build more than 10 extraordinary ones. This is how momentum builds, not in sprints, but in cadence. And eventually your brain stops asking, do I want to? It starts assuming, this is what I do. That's when you become dangerous. That's when you move without resistance. That's when you create not through force, but through flow. But momentum alone is not enough. It must be guided. It must be aimed. And that brings us to the final step, the reflection that recalibrates everything. Now, pause. Take a breath. Not because you're finished, but because you're about to begin again, on stronger ground. You've learned why most goals fail. They're misaligned, emotionally hollow, or borrowed from someone else's life. You've seen how the brain builds belief, not from wishful thinking, but from visualized identity and repeated behavior. You've absorbed the formula: clarity, emotion, structure, time, and action. You've heard the warning of empty achievement and the wisdom of strategic failure. You've discovered the truth. Success isn't something you chase, it's something you become. So now the question echoes back to you: what will you do with this? Because here's the hard truth: if you don't rebuild your goals on purpose, with precision, then you'll keep living inside old architecture, chasing outcomes you no longer want, using methods that no longer work, and wondering why nothing seems to change. You cannot live an extraordinary life with ordinary thinking, and you cannot reach new outcomes with the same identity that built the old ones. So today, rebuild. Not just your to-do list, but your self-concept. Ask yourself, what do I truly value? Who am I becoming? What does success feel like, not just look like? What am I willing to repeat daily because it aligns with who I am? Then take a blank page and set the goal again. But this time, write it not from ambition, but from alignment. Not from pressure, but from purpose. Speak it aloud, visualize it deeply, break it into behaviors, anchor it to your days, build the neural pathway, cast the votes. You'll know the goal is right when it doesn't just excite you, it calms you. Because you'll feel that you're no longer pretending, you're just becoming. And the beauty is, you won't need anyone's permission. You'll wake up and begin, not out of hype, but out of truth. And one day, when the results come, when the body changes, the money grows, the vision manifests, you'll realize it wasn't the goal that changed your life. It was the process of becoming the kind of person who could no longer live without it. So go rebuild your goals, boldly, precisely, truthfully, not just for the sake of hitting them, but for the sake of who you'll become on the way. That, my friend, is the real reason you're not hitting your goals. And that is the formula to change everything.